Привет всем! Канал спецтехники представляет. Дорогие друзья, сейчас мы посмотрим сборку двигателя WEICHAI WD 615.
Find out parts which must be replaced for purchasing later. The measured parts must be put according to certain order and be marked with symbols. Measurement of connecting rod beak and bore, theoretical size of the bore 82.028 to 82.050. Measurement of small ending bushing and standard size of bushing bore 50.04 to 50.055. Calibrated dial gauge and measure size of connecting rod bore. Assembly of cylinder head. Check and clean the inner cavities of cylinder head. Assemble the inlet and outlet valves into cylinder head and the valve could be moved smoothly. Turn the top face upwards. Assemble the inner valve spring, outer valve spring, upper spring seat and valve collet. Then knock the outlet valve with the nylon hammer slightly and make it falling into seat. After the cylinder head assembled, check the valve sinkage. For outlet valve 1.07 to 1.43, maximum 1.48. Inlet valve 0.87 to 1.23, maximum 1.8. Measurement of connecting rod journal. Standard journal diameter is 81.970 to 82.000. Measurement of crankshaft main journal. Standard journal diameter is 99.970 to 100.000. Measurement of camshaft, theoretical size 59.94 to 59.97. Measure the size of cylinder liner bottom bore on two direction with dial gauge. Standard bore diameter is 130.00 to 130.025. Calibrate the dial gauge and measure the sizes of cylinder bore at top, middle and bottom position symmetrically. Assemble a cylinder liner. Clean up the cylinder bore and coat some molybdenum sulfide powder on the outer surface of cylinder liner and then assemble them into cylinder block in order with special tool. Measure the inner bore diameter of cylinder liner. Standard bore diameter is 126.000 to 126.025. Measure the sizes of cylinder bore at top, middle at bottom positioned symmetrically. Measurement of camshaft bore. Theoretical size is 60.01 to 60.06. Calibrate the dial gauge and measure the sizes of camshaft bore on two directions symmetrically. Measure the diameter of main bearing bore with dial gauge. Standard bore diameter is 100.095 to 100.141. Assemble piston ring. Assemble the spiral spring into the oil ring and then assemble O-ring, cone ring and trapezoid ring on the piston. The small end of the cone ring and the face with top of trapezoid ring should be upwards. The ring gap should be staged by 120 degrees. Heat piston to 60 degrees Celsius with hot oil, hot water or oven. Mount piston pit circlip, clean the piston pit and wipe some lubricating oil. Take out the heated piston and put it onto workbench. Insert the small end of the connecting rod into the inner cavity of piston and align the small end bore of connecting rod with piston pin hole. Assemble piston pin into piston. Pay attention to the direction of combustion chamber with the connecting rod. Before assembling, wipe some lubricating oil on the surfaces of small end bore of connecting rod and piston pin hole. Check and blow the injection nozzle with compressed air before assembling. When mounting the spring pin, the side with chamfers should be outwards. Assemble camshaft and truss plate. Wipe the shaft journals with lubricating oil before assembling and check the actual clearance. Theoretical clearance 0.1 to 0.4. Wipe general lithium grease on the outer face of lower main bearing shelf and assemble it on the lower crankcase. Assemble the truss plate with the oil groove outwards. Wipe some general lithium grease on the inner side of the lower half of truss plate. Assemble sleeve tube and seal ring on the crankcase. Assembly of crankshaft assembly. Sling up crankshaft, blow out and clean the oil passages. Main bearing journal and connecting rod journal with compressed air and put the crankshaft onto cylinder block. Spray the joint faces of cylinder block and crankcase with 755 cleaner and wipe 510 anaerobic sealant on the joint faces. Sling up the crankcase and turn over through an angle of 180 degrees and put it on the cylinder block lightly. Knock the bottom of crankcase lightly and drive into the dowel pin. Wipe lubricating oil on sliding seal sleeve and tools and press "Do not knocking" the rear oil seal for crankshaft into crankcase. Pre-tightening the main bearing bolts according to geographical representation order. Tighten the 14 main bearing bolts according to the specified order. The crankshaft could be turned easily. Put on self-locking washer 1882500A3, 22 pieces. Screw on inner hexagon screw and hexagon bolt. Check the height should be 0.02 to 0.07 of cylinder liner to outdo the cylinder block upper faces with depthometer. Assembly of piston and connecting rod. 1. The quality marks on connecting rods of one group must be same. The weight difference is no bigger than 29 grams. Assemble piston pin circle clip. 2. Connecting rod and piston pin. Before assembling, heat the piston to 60 Celsius with hot oil, hot water or oven. Before assembly, check the connecting rod bearing shelf and wipe lubricating oil onto the connecting rod bolts. Prevent connecting rod bumps into or injures the spray nozzle. Wipe lubricating oil on the connecting rod bearing shell and the piston pin and the special tool for mounting piston. Tighten up the connecting rod bolts alternatively and gradually. Change the bolt with torque out with this torque range. Rotate the crankshaft and check the actual clearance of connecting rod. The crankshaft could be rotated easily. Turn over the cylinder block through an angle of 90 degrees. Coat some lithium grease and adhere the oil pump gasket onto crankcase. Mount oil pump and locate with special locating pin or oil pump intermediate gear shaft. Screw onto the two screws M10 x 30 and tighten up. Take out the locating pin on intermediate gear shaft. The gear could be rotated easily and successfully. Assembly of flywheel housing. Wipe lubricating oil on the screws and then the joint face. Screw on the screws and tighten up symmetrically by 2 times. First time 40 Nm, second time turn angle 120 plus minus 5 degrees. The relevant torque is 110 Nm to 140 Nm. Change the screw with torque out of this torque range. Mode up flywheel, pre-tighten up the screws with torque of 30 to 50 Nm firstly, then tighten up the screws symmetrically by 2 times. First time 60 Nm, second time turn angle 180 plus minus 5 degrees. The relevant torque is 230 Nm to 280 Nm. Assembly of timing gear case and intermediate gear. Code 510 anaerobic sealant on joint faces of cylinder block and timing gear case. Assemble the gear shaft into intermediate gear and then assemble into timing gear case. Do not heat the gear when mounting. Pay attention to the non-symmetrical screw holes and their correct position. Knock the shaft into gear case with the grooved face upwards. The end face of the shaft should be of 0.5 mm shrinkage than the intermediate gear shaft. Coat some 242 anaerobic sealant and mount the bolts M10 x 95 to 10.0 through the oil pump intermediate gear onto cylinder block and pre-tighten up with a torque of 60 plus minus 5 Nm and the torque of angle of 90 degrees. Change the bolts with torque out of this torque range. Tighten up all M10 bolts on gear case. Put a C-ring 78 times 2V2150 part number 900031206002 into the groove of triangle cover and coat 510 anaerobic sealant evenly. Fasten the triangle cover with 2 E-nuts and 1 inner hexagon screw. Q218B0816. Mount front oil seal, timing gear and cover. Press the front oil seal into the seat with special tool. Assemble seat gasket and front oil. seal seat with isolating seal ring. Screw on 4 inner hexagon screws. .65 times 9.5 BIN 07603 and 4 Q218B 0625. Bearing the first and 6 cylinders to TDC. Assemble camshaft timing gear. Align the scale division line on camshaft timing gear with the OT line on timing gear case. Check the gear clearance after assembling. Assemble camshaft gear cover. Assembly of transmission shaft and end compressor. Fourth, assemble transmission shaft, compression block, bearing, compression ring. For the compression ring, the side with the boss faces the bearing and the side with the groove outwards. For the compression block, the side with chamfer faces shaft step aside. Code 271 aerobic sealant on the outer side of bearing and knock the pre-assembled transmission shaft into timing gear case. Mount cover plate and tighten up the two screws, M10 times 150. Put on 7 profile washer B8 and 7 hexagon bolt and tighten them up. Mount injection pump gear, coat some 242 anaerobic sealant on the thread of shaft and screw on E-nuts and tighten up with a torque of 300 Nm. Wipe lubricating oil and 242 anaerobic sealant on the inner and outer faces of the shaft oil seal, respectively, and knock into the shaft oil seal. Push the coupler onto oil compressor shaft and mount hexagon bolts. Mount injection pump bracket and injection pump. The pump body could not contact with cylinder block. torque for screw is 25 Nm. Mount the rubber washer between injection pump and coupler. For pump without advancer, do not use this part. Screw on the inner hexagon screws with washer and bushing. Wipe 242 anaerobic sealant on thread parts. Torque for M10x18 and M12x45 are 64 Nm and 110 Nm respectively. Mount fuel filter assembly. Assembly of tappet. Before mounting, blow the tappet with compressed air and check the oil port and then wipe with lubricating oil. Block the bolt hole with compressed air. Mount cylinder head gasket, cylinder head and bolts. Loose assemble cylinder head secondary bolts with 262 anaerobic sealant on screwed end. Wipe lubricating oil on supporting surfaces and mount clamp block and lift ring clamp block. Loose mounting of cylinder head main bolts. Wipe lubricating oil before assembly of cylinder head main bolts. Mount water outlet tube. Screw bolts with force of 30 Nm. Screw up cylinder head main bolts and nuts according to the specified order in operation and maintenance manual of WD615 diesel engine. Level cylinder heads and tighten up all secondary bolts and main bolts with force of 30 Nm. According to the screw order, tighten up secondary nuts and main bolts with torque of 100 Nm and 200 Nm respectively. Turn the secondary nuts and main bolts of angle of 90 degrees in order. According to the screw order, turn the secondary nut an angle of 90 degrees further. The torque is about 120 to 160 Nm. Turn the main bolts of angle of 90 degrees further. The torque is about 240 to 340 Nm. Remove water outlet tube, assemble valve push rod, block the push rod with compressed air before mounting. Loose assemble rocker and arm bracket and tighten up hexagon bolt with torque of 98 plus 10 Nm. adjust valve clearance. Barring the first cylinder compression TDC, adjust intake exhaust valve clearance of first cylinder, intake valve clearance of second and fourth cylinders, and exhaust valve clearance of third and fifth cylinders. Barring the flywheel throughout an angle of 360 degrees and adjust the other valve clearances. Intake valve clearance 0.3 mm, exhaust valve clearance 0.4 mm. Assembly of injector subassembly. Screw starts on the cylinder head, put the washer into injector hole. Assemble the injector with all rubbering on the cylinder head. Mount tightening plate. Loose assemble profile washer and E-nut and tightening alternately. Torque 25 Nm. Assemble cylinder head gasket and cylinder head cover and tighten up bolts. Adjustment of fuel advance angle. Connect fuel supply equipment and injection pump and remove the bolts for coupler. Discharge the air in injection pump and make the first cylinder flushing oil. Do not press start fuel device during adjusting. Bearing and align with advance angle before TDC. Tighten up the bolts for coupler with torque of 150 Nm. Mount oil strainer and relieve valve. Turn the cylinder block through an angle of 180 degrees to make the bottom side upwards and check the inside of cylinder block without foreign matters. Assemble strainer subassembly. Check the welding line if there is any cracks. Coat 242 anaerobic sealant on bolts M10x25 and tightening up. Screw on the relief valve for main oil passage. Coat some 242 anaerobic sealant on the thread portion before assembly. Assembly of oil sump. Set gasket on oil sump assembly. The gasket should be smooth and the joint should be on the straight portion. Check the clearance of oil pump gear and tighten up the oil strainer and relief valve before assembly. Mount gasket and magnetic screw plug. Assembly of oil pipe and fuel pipe assembly. Loose mount oil inlet pipe subassembly with hollow screws and seal washers on cylinder block. Mount pipe clips and pipes. Loose mount fuel pipe subassembly with hollow screws and seal washers on fuel filler outlet. The other end of fuel pipe is connected with delivery pump. Tighten up hollow screws and adjust fuel pipe position. A seal washer should be set on the outlet port of injection pump. Set the seal washer and loose mount lube oil inlet pipe on air compressor with hollow screw. Assembly of high pressure fuel pipes. Blow fuel pipe with compressed air if possible. Tighten the hollow screws to fix the high pressure fuel pipe onto injector and injection pump. Mount water outlet pipe. Mount intake manifolds, screws and gasket onto cylinder heads. Loose mount water outlet pipe and then tighten them up. Screw down all bolts and nuts of high pressure fuel pipe clip. Assemble fuel return pipe subassembly. Screw secondary bolt onto cylinder head inlet flange. Loose mount intake manifold and then tighten up all screws for intake manifold beginning from middle to the end side symmetrically after level edge. Assembly of air pipe of injection pump. Loose mount air pipe subassembly on small limiter of injection pump with hollow screws and seal washer. The another end of air pipe connects with intake manifold with hollow screw. Mount and tighten up flame preheater on intake manifold. Mount fuel pipe for cold starting device. Assembly of start motor. Before assembly of start motor, wipe general lithium grease on the gear. Assemble main oil passage relief valve, spring rubbering and tighten up the screw plug with 242 anaerobic sealant on the thread portion. Assembly of oil gas separator. 1. Loose assemble the oil gas separator onto clamp block. 2. Wipe 277 anaerobic sealant on ventilation elbow and knock into a cylinder block. 3. Screw down inner hexagon screws and bolts. 4. Insert the rubber pipe with clips and two ends in between the oil gas separator and oil sump through the fixed plate. Clean the oil filter seat before wiping 150 anaerobic sealant evenly and then tighten up the filter seat. After replacing the filter element, mount oil filter on the engine. Mount oil filter and filter cover. Loose mount re-exhaust manifold with gasket. Wipe molykote powder and oil on the bolt supporting face and thread. Mount seal ring on the front exhaust manifold. The gas of two rings should be separated for 90 degrees. Wipe molykote powder and oil. Slightly insert front exhaust manifold into the rear one with manifold gasket. Loose mount exhaust manifold bolts. Wipe molykote powder and oil on the bolt supporting face and thread. Align the front manifold with the rear one. Tighten the bolt symmetrically to 30 plus 10 Nm at first, then turn an angle of 2 times 90 degrees. The last tightening torque reaches to 70 to 110 Nm. Wipe molykote powder and oil on the studs and mount them into the rear exhaust manifold. Mount turbocharger oil, inlet pipe component, turbocharger and return pipe component. Wipe molykote powder and oil on the studs. Pay attention to the position of the oil inlet pipe component when mounting and tighten the inlet pipe component. Mount water pump gasket, water pump subassembly and fastening lever. Loose mount the tensioning bolt. Mount water pipe joint gasket, water pipe joint and tighten them. Mount generator, vibration damper and pulley. The hexagon bolts should be tightened symmetrically with torque of 60 plus 5 Nm. Mount tensioning pulley and V-belt. For type O belt, water pump belt sinkage is 4 to 6 mm under 13 to 19 Nm force. For type O belt, generator belt sinkage is 3 to 4.5 mm under 9 to 13 Nm force. After tensioning generator belt, tighten the nut on the tensioning bolt. Mount thermostat subassembly and water temperature gauge sensor. Mount compressor inlet pipe subassembly, turbocharger compressor outlet pipe and connecting elbow. Mount circlip behind the joining plate and put tensioning pin through the circlip belt. Check if all the components are at their places. Turn the flywheel and rotate the crankshaft. Check if the rotation is flexible and if there is any blockage. After engine overhaul, restart the engine running in test and inspect the engine according to the specification for rotated power, max torque or fuel consumption.
Напиши свои вопросы и свое мнение, и это станет темами для новых видео. Подпишись на канал, и мы не потеряем друг друга. Ставьте пальчики вверх, подписывайтесь. До новых встреч, пока!